Good morning, everyone. Ladies and gentlemen, children of all ages, you have arrived at Sea of Tranquility. Welcome to another edition of Ranking the Albums. Today we're actually going to talk about a couple of American bands today, not only on this show, but on other shows that will air today. The first one we're going to talk about is a very underrated heavy band from the U.S. Kind of got their start in the very late 60s, all right, 1969. They were fairly prevalent throughout the first half or the majority of the 70s, then kind of broke up, popped back in again in the 80s, a little bit in the 90s, a little bit in the 2000s. Since then, we've seen kind of like a couple different factions, right, of members not playing together but playing the music of this band. Of course, I'm talking about Mountain, one of the unsung heroes of the early heavy rock scene. All right, another one of those bands that probably doesn't get talked enough when the topic of, who were some of the originators of heavy metal, right? Because let's face it, a lot of Mountain's early material, pretty damn heavy for the time. Pretty heavy, all right? So what I'm going to do, they don't have a ton of albums. What I'm going to do is I'm going to rank them in the order that I like them, okay, from my least favorite to my favorite. I will say most of these are pretty damn good. Some of them not quite as strong as others. Obviously the early catalog is pretty exemplary, pretty outstanding. Some of the later stuff has its good material, has its misfires, right? So what I'm going to do is, and there's a couple of them I don't physically have, but I have heard them numerous times, so I'm going to rank them and not show them. All right, the rest, I have the majority of them, so we'll kind of do it from there. So you're welcome to rank them as you like them as well. If you want to rank the whole discography, or if you maybe just want to give your 5 favorite Mountain albums, right? Leslie West and Company, great band, great guitar player. Yeah, just always dug these guys. First kind of made a name for themselves at the Woodstock Festival back in 1969, August of 1969, and a very influential band for the next kind of 5 years or so. So let's get started here. So I've kind of gone back and forth on my least favorite here. Again, both of them I like, but I think the first one I'm going to go with, and I've changed my mind a couple times on these, and I'll kind of get into why. I'm going to go with 1996's Man's World first, okay, as my least favorite. Again, this is, Leslie West on guitar and vocals, Corky Lang on drums. Okay, you got Mark Clark on bass. Mark Clark, of course, formerly of Uriah Heep and briefly with Rainbow, and he was in Coliseum, right? Pretty good bass player, kind of popped up all over the place. He kind of recorded with them a couple times. All right, Man's World, pretty decent album, kind of bluesy, good guitar tones from Leslie. I think the material just doesn't quite stack up. I think some of the latter period Mountain stuff, that songwriting just wasn't there. They really missed the songwriting of Felix Pappalardi, I think, after he passed away. So that's going to come at the bottom. I actually flip-flopped these a little bit, but I'm going to go with next at number, number 7. I'm going to go with Go For Your Life from 1985. So this was kind of the big return from the band after many years, all right? God, a little over 10 years. And again, this is that same lineup we just mentioned. So this is Corky Lang, Leslie West, and Mark Clark on bass. This album suffers for a couple things. First of all, I think obviously 1985, right? ZZ Top was basically pretty huge at the time, so a lot of bands, old bands who were kind of trying to make a comeback, they went for that kind of formula, right? The cranking guitars with the programmed drums and all that kind of stuff. It didn't really work for Mountain, but I will say there's a couple songs on here that are kick-ass, like Hard Times, one of the heaviest tunes this band ever did. Okay, Shimmy on the Footlights. Babe in the Woods is a killer tune, a little bit of Insanity. This album kind of suffers from those horrible sounding drums. I don't know what Corky Lang was thinking. Maybe it wasn't his decision. I don't know. Leslie West's guitar tone, though, is just absolutely monstrous on here. Screaming solos and pinch harmonics and heavy riffs. But, some of the material just isn't really that good. About half of the album is just kind of really lackluster. The other's pretty damn good and pretty rocking. So, for a mid-'80s album, it's pretty heavy and a pretty good return from Mountain. Again, not one of their best albums, obviously, but I think it's pretty noteworthy. I dig it. Coming in at number 6, we're going to go to 2002's Mystic Fire, another one that I don't own, but I've heard, and I actually dig a lot. I'm surprised I never picked that up, but I'm going to go order that and get it, because it's actually really good. So Mystic Fire from 2012, that's got Leslie West, Corky Lang, all right, Todd Wolfe, and Chuck Herney, okay, on second guitar and bass. Pretty good album, pretty heavy. Again, more really good heavy, molten heavy rock riffs from Leslie West. I think the songs actually work pretty well. As an early 2000s release, it's a good sounding album. It's pretty heavy. I mean, some of the song lyrics and content, not the best, but you know what? It's just a good, heavy, modern heavy rock album, and that was to be the last release of all new material that we would see from the band. They would put out one more album that would be all Bob Dylan covers, which I'm not going to talk about today because it's basically a covers album. But I think Mystic Fire, pretty damn solid album and pretty heavy. If you like the heavier stuff of Mountain, definitely check that out. All right, next up we're going to go to, for number 5, right? Number 6? Number 5. I'm going to go to Avalanche from 1974. Okay, so here we got the 2-on-1. So we got the live album on here, Twin Peaks, which I did quite a bit. Check it out if you haven't. Avalanche right there. Okay, so this is basically the last studio recording with the classic trio. Or actually, they were a 4-piece at this point in time because they had a keyboard player as well. But you've got, Felix Pappalardi, okay, Corky Lang, Leslie West, and David Perry, okay, who actually played second guitar. Okay, and a little color on there, so they say. Pretty good album. All right, pretty good album. Some strong tracks. So here you got, they do a really good remake of Whole Lot of Shakin' going on. You got Sister Justice, Allison, Swamp Boy. Very cool tune. Very cool tune. What else? They do a remake of Satisfaction, starting to do a lot of covers. Obviously, that's not a good sign when you got a band who's written such really good material previously, and then all of a sudden, a little bit later in their career, they're pumping out a lot of cover tunes because, they're having problems writing material, right? What else? Thumbsucker, another good, really heavy tune. Again, a lot of the more potent tracks from the Mountain catalog were actually written by Felix Pappalardi. What else? You Better Believe It, another good tune. That's a Weston Lang track. What's Back Where I Belong, Last of the Sunshine Days. Solid album, okay? Not the best from that early classic lineup, but a solid album nonetheless. All right, so next up we're going to go to number 4. I'm going to go with Flowers of Evil from 1971. Actually, it's the shirt I'm wearing today. This is a damn good album. It's basically half studio, half live. All right, so the live stuff recorded from the Fillmore East in New York City, but of the studio tracks are kicking. All right, so we got the killer Flowers of Evil, okay, written by West Rian Pappalardi. You got King's Corral, all right, One Last Cold Kiss, the incredible Crossroader, even better on that live album I showed you before. And then Pride and Passion, another really cool tune. A lot of kind of moods on these songs, right? They're heavy, they're kind of bluesy, definitely atmospheric and moody. Then you've got the live stuff, which you've got a killer rendition of Mississippi Queen from the Fillmore, and then that long dream sequence, which they were doing in concert quite a bit around that time, and that actually allowed for a lengthy Leslie West guitar solo. Okay, as well as they threw in Roll Over Beethoven, all right, Chuck Berry classic. The incredible Dreams of Milk and Honey, very, very early track from the band from Leslie West's Mountain album. Variations in Swan Theme, okay, very cool, lengthy suite there, filled with all sorts of heaviness and good time rock and roll, right? Really good stuff. All right, next up, and I'm sure some people might rank this one a little bit higher. I mean, I think for me, the top 3 on my list are just absolute drop-dead classics. All right, I'm going to go with 1971's Nantucket Sleigh Ride. Again, the classic trio here. Gotta love it. Some just great songs on here. You got Nantucket Sleigh Ride, of course, the immortal song. You've got The Animal Trainer and the Toad, kind of a fun little ditty right there. You've got The Great Train Robbery. You got Don't Look Around. This album is filled with like really heavy songs and more kind of like folky, almost proggy type stuff, right? What else? Traveling in the Dark, Kick Ass, You Can't Get Away, Tired Angels. Good stuff. Probably their most artsy album, if that makes any sense. All right. definitely an album with a lot of variety, and it deserves all the acclaim that it's gotten over the years. Next up is not a mountain album technically, but the fact that the title of the album is Mountain, the fact that a majority of these songs the band actually played live always in their repertoire, I'm going to call it a mountain album. It's Leslie West's solo album, his first ever release, titled Mountain, also featuring Felix Pappalardi on bass and N.D. Smart on drums, and a guy named Norman Landsberg, I believe his name was, on Hammond organ. But, for all intents and purposes, this is Mountain. I have always considered this a Mountain album. It was the blueprint for what became Mountain. Leslie, just after he put this album out, was like, you know what, I just want to make a band out of this and call it Mountain. That's what he did, right? Brought in Corky Lang, the rest is history. But some drop-dead heavy rock classics on here for the time. I mean, this is 1969, right? So this is pre the band actually debuting as Mountain at Woodstock. Okay, you've got Blood of the Sun, you got Long Red, Better Watch Out, Baby I'm Down, the incredible Dreams of Milk and Honey, which has one of the greatest riffs of all time, in my opinion, on there. What else? Southbound Train, Look to the Wind, Storyteller Man, this Wheels on Fire, molten guitar riffs from Leslie West on here. Man, this is a great album, and quite frankly, if it wasn't for the next album, this would probably be my all-time favorite Mountain album, right? But of course, that one has got to be, number one's got to be Climbing, or Climbing, with an exclamation point, from 1970. All right, of course, the classic trio on here. The legendary Mississippi Queen kicking it all off. The very kind of atmospheric and hook-laden yet mysterious theme from an imaginary Western. All right, you got the killer heavy rock and Never in My Life. Love the riff on that. Killer. Silver Paper. Okay, another great song. For Yasgur's Farm, To My Friend, The Laird, Sittin' on a Rainbow, another cool bluesy heavy rock riff, and Boys in the Band. Perhaps their best sounding album, perhaps from a songwriting perspective, their strongest album. I don't think a lot would disagree with that, and a pretty damn heavy album. But it's got its light touches too. That was the great thing about this band. Had the light and the heavy. They did both, and then you had the two lead singers, right? Because Felix sang and Leslie West sang, and Leslie West had a very unmistakable voice. Okay, and Felix had more of a smoother voice. And man, Leslie West guitar tone on some of these early albums. Telling you, either playing that Gibson Les Paul Jr. or the Flying V. I mean, there's him right there. I'm assuming that's from Woodstock, playing the Flying V. One of the greatest guitar players of all time, right? Just he had that feel, he had that tone for a big man, and he was a big man back in the day. His tone was sweet. Love it. So anyway, there you have it. Let's go down my list. Number one is going to be Climbing. Number two, Leslie West Mountain. Number three, Nantucket Sleigh Ride. Number four, Flowers of Evil. Number five, Avalanche. Number six, Mystic Fire from 2002. Number seven, Go For Your Life from 1985. And number eight, Man's World from 1996. Also do want to mention that the Twin Peaks live album, got to check it out. It's great. But more importantly, there's a host of great live Mountain albums. If you can get the Woodstock performance, it's terrific. There's also a New Year's Eve performance from, I believe, is it either 1969 going to 70 or 70, 71? I forget exactly. It might be 70, 71, which is terrific. Okay, a lot of good. They release like all these unofficial, like kind of like bootleg releases, live albums that are just killer. They vary in sound, but they're just really, really good. Shows you the power of this band early on. As you can tell, I really love these guys. So anyway, there you have it. Visit us on the web at www.seatranquility.org. We're on Facebook. We're on Twitter. Of course, we're on YouTube all the damn time. Stay tuned. Within moments, we're going to look at the studio albums of Rival Sons. You don't want to miss that. So we'll see you real soon. Take care. Bye-bye.